next up, we're going to have Jim Lorraine, President of America's Warrior Partnership. Jim, I know we were chatting back and forth. Are you driving your slides, or you want me to? Looks like you got it.
Yeah, I'll take care of it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Hey, I want to thank Linda Davis and Jim Wertzke and all the leadership of the VA for bringing this together and getting everybody talking. Very happy to be presenting and talking about something that we feel is very important, is the CVEB task force. Just to give an update, can everyone see the slide? Tony, are you good?
The email. We got them there in the program.
We're good.
Okay, great. The CVEB task force, just to give you a little bit of background, about a year ago, the Deputy Secretary of the Veterans Affairs suggested that a nonprofit that was involved in community work and had to take a look at the CVEBs in terms of measures, metrics, and outcomes. And at America's Warrior Partnership, our community programs are very measurement-based and outcomes-based. So we took it on and said that we would facilitate it. And that's what I want to point out, just sort of the foot stomp here, is that what we're doing as America's Warrior Partnership is to facilitate the discussion. This isn't our task force. When we have our meetings, I'm really clear to everyone that this is the CVEBs who are attending and those who are represented. It's their task force, because the outcomes and what happens are developed and to be used by them. Our goal is to develop, again, the measures, metrics, and outcomes, some suggested ones that the CVEBs could use. The goal is to be flexible in choice and consistent in content, so that CVEBs could have the opportunity to measure what's important to them in their community, but when you aggregate them to a regional level or a state level or to the federal level, you're measuring apples to apples to apples. Just to go also through it, the task force, we kept it small. So it's 30 organizations, it's a 60-40 split between national organizations that have a community presence and CVEBs that, in coordination with the VA, we had some recommendations that came in about some CVEBs that would be, we were looking for a diversity, big cities, small towns, rural, urban, West Coast, East Coast, North, South, and we got a pretty good mix of them, I think. The national organizations are there not to drive the decisions on the metrics, but to sort of advise, so that there's some consistency in what they measure and what they measure in communities, and then what CVEBs can learn from them. We're really appreciative of the fact that the Veterans Affairs, Department of Veterans Affairs is in attendance, and they're there as an advisory. What I wanted to make sure was that we didn't rewrite what the CVEB program was, because the VA has done such a great job of that. We wanted to stay within the bounds of what was already out there. And last thing is, as I said, the CVEBs are represented from all over the country. This is the timeline. We started this back in March. We will end it in September. The structure is 3 meetings in person with some interviews and phone conferences in between with homework. So it's not just come to a meeting and everyone leave. Everyone gets homework, and then when we consolidate it, we use a great facilitator called Cicero Group that's leading this effort to get 30 very passionate nonprofits that are working in the veteran space to all communicate together and get moving and rowing in the same direction at the same pace is a great feat. So we're appreciative of that. This is an eye chart, but it's important because these are all the members of the task force. The grayed out areas are the members that are from the CVEB. Adam is there from Winchester, Virginia. We've got Jacksonville, North Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Colorado Springs. I know that I read the agenda of who was going to be on the call, and a number of the task force members are on this call, and I want to thank them for taking the time and their expertise to bring to this effort. You can see the VA reps and you can see the national reps, as again, these are organizations that have a presence in the community. Next slide. I'm trying to keep to my 20 minutes here, Tony, so I'm going to move a little bit. What I wanted to do is we did a survey leading into the last CVEB task force meeting, and I wanted to share the results with it. So we had a 33% response rate, which was pretty good for an online survey. We went out to all the CVEBs to ask them for their opinion. So you can see some of the comments to the right, but overall the CVEBs are pretty satisfied with the program and with the CVEB initiative and where it's going and what they have. And they've had some positive comments, and of course they've had some negative comments, but we're working through that. Majority of them are very positive. It's interesting, again, we're talking about metrics. The vast majority of CVEBs believe that metrics, they need metrics to understand their impact, and they need to start measuring. Then it comes to a question about how many, anywhere from 1 to 3, 4 to 6. So 1 to 6 measures they feel is appropriate, and I'm gonna drill into that in a little bit here in a second. This is what the CVEB felt was, this is the percent of the time that they were mentioned, CVEB outcomes. So the highest measurement, or the outcomes that they look at are outreach, mental health, and you'd assume these. And then it slips down to the right, independence of daily living, fitness on the right-hand side, media. But outreach, mental health, employment. To go back to what Amy just talked about in terms of the suicide prevention, I really appreciated what she said, is that, we don't know our veterans, and it's important to do outreach and engagement to our veterans and to get to know who they are. And I'm appreciative, I'm happy to see that the CVEBs feel the same way. And then as you move down the line, you can see what's important, or the percent mentioned. Then what we did was we asked them what they felt were their top 5. And it was interesting, again, outreach, mental health, suicide prevention moved up, homelessness moved up, and unemployment moved up. All the things that we always hear, that we're always driving for, whether you're speaking at the national level or at the local level. But over to the right is really interesting too. Suicide prevention is the #1 thing most important. They ranked them by importance. Suicide prevention, access to health care, compensation and benefits, rural access, and mental health. These were pretty insightful. Again, what I liked about this survey is it's a mix. It's not just the cities speaking. It's the cities, rural areas, a mix of rural and urban. Then what we asked them was, what did you feel like was valuable in terms of what your time is spent doing? And what do you think is important in terms of, these slides, these were what outcomes should you pursue, and then this is what are the efforts that you should make. Not surprising, they felt like sharing information was important. And on this slide, you'll see what their current role is and what they'd like to do. So it's what they actually do and where they'd like to be. Information was key, coordination, advocacy, and then it starts to dwindle down. For those who are on the phone, to education, data collection, accountability, and then fundraising. The CVEB priority in terms of the most important, they felt like information was most important, coordination, advocacy, education, data collection, and then at the end, accountability and fundraising. One of the things that we talked about in terms of data collection was that some of the CVEBs felt like, how am I going to get this data? And what our position is that if you're a CVEB and you're convening these experts and your community representatives together, and you've got a housing person there, and you've got an employment person, and you've got maybe somebody who's doing women's health and suicide prevention is sitting at the table, have them bring what they track in their measures, and provide it so that you can then coalesce it and bring it together in terms of the data collection effort. It's not that they're doing the data collection, it's that they know the people who are doing the services and use their data collection. This is, so one of the outcomes of the last in-person meeting, and again, we have one more in-person meeting coming up. 83% of the participants agreed that the task force would make some recommendations. The recommendations are not to mandate the priorities of individual CVEBs must choose. So again, that's giving CVEBs a list, some core things that should be tracked, but then a pick list of other things that should be tracked, so that they can focus on their work and focus their efforts. And then when we do that, provide them with a recommended list of measures, and then, well, outcomes, and then with the measures that were associated with it. So how do you measure it? What are the standards? So that we can look for a consistency, not to draw a line and say this is success and this is not success, but to say these are the things that should be measured, and through data analysis over time, we can then figure out where is the line of who's doing the most good and what is the most impactful. The CVEB Task Force strongly recommended a common sort of a core group of measures that they look at, and that's outreach. How many veterans do you know in your community? Access to mental health, access to health care, the suicide prevention, homelessness, employment, and education. Again, the vision is that the CVEBs, the representatives who are attending the meetings, are bringing this data points to the table to say, hey, this is where we are, so that the CVEB can then prioritize what their efforts would be for the next year going forward. The last thing, this is just a continuation. Again, to plan on a common set of outcome metrics to be refined and potentially change over time. That the focus is really on for their efforts is on information management, conveying and transmitting and keeping everyone informed, coordinating and convening meetings, data collection, education and leadership. And we felt that leadership was really core to a CVEB. When you think about it, you're leading a board of community leaders. You have to have leadership as a key component to it. One of the things that the task force was split on, and we haven't come to a conclusion, is accountability. So how accountable should they take a role of advocacy, community advocate, in terms of keeping organizations accountable for the services that they provide and the outcomes that they achieve, or should they just be the aggregator of information and then as a board see where it goes? So they're on the fence of whether accountability is important or whether it's something that they shouldn't provide. So all this leads us to a start for a foundation resource guide, best practices, to provide an opportunity for the CVEB to engage one another. I think that was one of the things that I've seen of the 9 CVEBs that have come together, is their ability and their desire to work together despite their geographic split, and how they all come together. That's been very refreshing. In the last, this is the document that we're looking to provide at the end. Again, the CVEB mission that's already out there, the structure, the role of CVEBs, the outcomes, activities. Again, staying within the bounds of what the VA has already created. They've done a great job of it, and I'm really appreciative. Again, we have one more in-person meeting. Then our timeline is to outbrief, let the VA know what we found, and then at our symposium, America's Warrior Partnership Symposium in September, we'll present it to everyone else, and hopefully figure out what the next step is. How do you implement it? Is it a CVEB-led implementation? Is the VA participating in it? Is it from the national nonprofits and the CVEBs together? That's yet to be found. But I welcome any suggestions from CVEBs that are out there that are not sitting on the board on the task force. So with that, I think I'm pretty close to my time. Unless you have any questions, I appreciate your time.
Okay, hey, thanks a lot, Jim. I'm just looking at the chat box here to see if anybody typed in any questions, and I'm not seeing any. So, does anyone out there or in the room here have any questions or comments for Jim? I will tell you, Jim, that a lot of what you talked about is a great segue for follow-on conversations we're going to be having. So it's very much appreciated, and thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
No problem. Thanks, Tony, for including us. I appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, well, this leads us up to the break. And what I've got it scheduled for is a break until 11 o'clock. So just ask everybody to be back ready to get started again at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
11:15?